Hi, I'm Corey McCricker, and my case is from Section 6, Case 5, Sexual Harassment. So it is about a young African American man, Andre, who is 23 years old. He just completed the police academy and he was hired by the Caden Police Department. So, little background on him. In his younger days, growing up, he always wanted to become a law enforcement officer. Family and friends always frowned upon him for wanting to be a law enforcement, but what encouraged him to want to get involved in law enforcement was the way he seen that the criminals in his neighborhood operated, and he felt that he could make a difference. So his training officer is a middle-aged white man, and he at first he's not very accepting of Andre because he is a black male. But as time goes on, he starts to get more accepting of him, and which makes it a little more comfortable for Andre. So as time goes on, he starts to enjoy the job more, basically because his training officer is being more accepting of him and he's not giving him the cold shoulder anymore. Like, he goes on to say that after all, he's not so bad, but also says that he has it easy because they chose him over probably more of a well-deserving white man because they need more minorities in the department. So about the Caden Police Department, they are a progressive police department, which means that they offer better pay and better benefits than the surrounding police departments in the local cities or towns in that area. So during his training, this is 6 months into his training, that he's starting to get evaluated by different officers of different ranks so they could have different viewpoints of the way he works instead of just having one person's mindset on how he's doing. But all of his training evaluations have came back excellent, and there's no need for any problems to surface from any of his training. So one day he gets a notice to meet with his captain, and she goes on to say that she was reviewing his training records, that there's no problems that surfaced or that she sees that will surface as time goes on, and that he's a respectable young man, and he sees that he has a bright future with the department. So also, he thinks the training officer tells him that she probably only has that job because her husband is on the city commission and he is much older than her, and he thinks that he had a lot of influence on the city and promoting her to captain. And the training officer also says that she'll be chief soon before long. So during the meeting with his captain, she goes on to praise Andre a lot about his work, his character, but also slips in that her husband is a great man and he does great things at work, but he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain at home. So she goes on to tell him that if he plays his cards right, that he'll have a bright future with the department regarding pay, benefits, position, and also says that one day that she wouldn't be surprised if he becomes detective. So as she's saying this, she has her hands on his shoulders while he's sitting down in the chair, and he's starting to feel a little uncomfortable with the whole situation because he kind of has an idea where it's going, and being young and new and on probation, he knows that one little slip up on his part, he could just get fired, which would be very costly to him because he just moved out of an apartment that he was renting and bought a decent sized house. So he has that to lose, and also he has a wife and a 14-month daughter that he has to care for. And along with that, him getting this job with the better pay that he was previously getting, or even the better pay that they offer rather than other departments, his wife was able to quit her job at the local supermarket because he was able to financially support the whole family just on his pay. So if he slips up here, then that means that there won't be anybody in the family to support. So as this goes on during the meeting, she goes on to say that, like I said, if he plays his cards right, good things will happen to him. And she goes on to say that her husband has a lot of pull and that he can make things happen that maybe some other person may not be able to do. So she has the power to advance his career through her husband's influence in the city. So as the meeting goes on, she goes on to say that she's very attracted to him, that she likes his character a lot. He's very well mannered, and she doesn't necessarily say that she wants to get sexually involved with him, but she hints at it. So she goes on to say that the next day she will handle his assignment and to meet her at her house the next day to talk about the future. But she said that she will change what his assignment was the next day so it won't raise any flags with any of the other training officer that he's supposed to be with or anything. So as this is going on, he doesn't know what to say, he doesn't know who to tell. He's scared that if he tells his training officer, it'll bring more racial backlash towards him from his training officer, from being a black man, thinking that, oh, if it was a white man, this wouldn't happen. And he doesn't really want to get into anything involving like affirmative action, racism with his training officer, because he doesn't know how his training officer would take it, knowing that he already is racist, and he doesn't want to cause any problems with him or lose the little trust that he gained. So he doesn't know who to tell in the department. He doesn't know if he should tell his wife. And so he doesn't know what to do regarding the next day. He doesn't know if he should go over and jeopardize his family by sleeping with his boss, or jeopardize his career that he worked so hard for and turn her down, because he doesn't know how hard she would take it. And also he doesn't know if he should go over her head and go to the chief of police to file the complaint, because filing sexual harassment complaints, it has to be filed to the captain, well, whoever is in charge of personnel and training, which is his captain. So he's not going to file a sexual harassment complaint about his captain to his captain. And he doesn't think that the chief would do anything about it, just because the influence her husband has on in the city. He thinks that he will just brush it under the rug and not make anything of it, which it would get brought to the captain, and he think he might lose his job there also. So I interviewed Massachusetts State Trooper Jose Alejandro, Tingsboro Patrolman Daniel Whitman, and a police officer from Lowell, Corey Rudy. So Jose, actually all three of them, they said that their sexual harassment policies are pretty much the same. The state of Massachusetts set out a sexual harassment law regarding workplaces. So all three, Tingsboro, Lowell, and the Massachusetts State Police Department, they all follow the guidelines that the state of Massachusetts set out. But the only difference between those two, the three, so Corey Rudy from Lowell and Jose Alejandro from the Massachusetts State Department, since they are part of large departments, they, just like Andre would, they report to the captain. But Daniel, he belongs to a smaller department in Tingsboro. There's not that many officers. There's not that much room to grow there. So they report for cases like that, they'll report to the chief. Just because the department is so small. Also, they all agree that this is definitely meets the guidelines of a sexual harassment complaint. So what they said involves a sexual harassment complaint. There's two different types. So one is the quid pro quo, which involves offering or requesting sexual requests to gain a career, to advance your career. So like this case, Captain Irene is requesting sexual pleasures from Andre to advance his career, to make his standing and pay and ranking much higher in the department for her personal needs. But the other is the hostile work environment, and that involves an employee just making the whole work environment uncomfortable, just making sexual comments that aren't welcomed one after another, and it just makes it very uncomfortable workplace. But not necessarily requesting anything sexually or offering anything sexually, just making sexual comments that makes the work environment very uncomfortable for somebody. So this case, it would definitely be the quid pro quo, just because the captain is requesting sexual acts from Andre to advance his career or make his career in good standing. Also, for the next question is, which characteristics are involved in this type of case? So Jose, he was the only one. He said that he thinks it makes it a non-typical case for a sexual harassment because the politics behind it. He says the only thing that makes it difficult is because who her husband is and how the chances of this case the complaint getting brushed right under the rug, because he's not going to let his wife be humiliated throughout the town, and the chief isn't going to want to go behind the city commission's back when he has so much influence throughout the city, because he is heavily involved in local and state politics. So he's a pretty big deal throughout the whole city. So Jose says that's what really makes it non-typical case for sexual harassment. But Corey and Dan, they both thought it was the gender role. They said throughout a lot of law enforcement agencies, you hear about sexual harassment, captains trying to request sexual pleasures from younger women officers to advance their careers, or keep their careers in good standing, keep their job security. And they say it's unusual for a woman to think like this, so they thought it was gender role, but I personally believe the same thing as Jose. I think the politics is what makes it complicated, especially for Andre. He has to. The only reason he's in a dilemma is because the influence that her husband has, and he thinks that his voice won't be heard if he complains to the chief, and also he might even lose his job because of it, because her captain is in charge of personnel and training, and she might just let him loose because he is on a probation period. So they might not necessarily just keep him around because she feels betrayed. Also, for the third question, it was, what choices does Andre have to approach this situation? So they each came up with the same three, not necessarily in the same order. So the three options were to fulfill her sexual pleasures and jeopardize his family, or go behind the captain's back to the chief of police to make the sexual harassment complaint with him and jeopardize his career. Or the third option was to have a sit down with his captain and explain that he's not comfortable with the situation, and explain he has a family, a daughter to care for, and hopefully that she would understand, and he say it won't affect their future encounters. And Jose and Dan both chose the sit down with the captain, trying to be adults about the situation instead of going behind someone's back, whether it's his wife's back or the captain's back, because that won't look good on either part with the department. Because if he goes behind the captain's back, then who in the department will trust him if he's willing to go behind his boss's back to his boss's boss? And Corey chose to file the complaint with the chief because he said he wouldn't want to hide anything from anybody. He wouldn't want to hide it from his wife, and he wouldn't want to jeopardize either of them, but he'd rather keep his pride than to jeopardize his family's well-being. So I was with Jose and Dan on this situation. I think that sitting down with her and explaining everything, because either way, if you go behind the captain's back or you do fulfill her sexual needs, you're gonna jeopardize something. So if you sit down with her, at least you have a chance of keeping your job, just because the influence that her husband has on the city. So no city will want to deal with that, and just the power that she has, that she was able to move up to captain so quickly, and there's rumors that she's going to move up to chief pretty quickly. I highly doubt that her husband would let this complaint stand within the department, or even the chief would want to go behind the city commissioner's back and allow this complaint to go through. So I think sitting down with her and hoping that she understands is probably the best route for this whole situation. I know if I was put in that situation, I would do that. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, where is this? Camden.
Caden
Caden.
Police Department.
What state?
I'm not sure.
And then, so if the sit down doesn't work, did the officers go into what steps they would take if the sit down didn't work? Would they file a complaint, or?
Yeah, they said they would file the. Well, Jose said he would file the complaint if the sit down didn't work, but Dan said that he would just let it go because he doesn't think that if he gets fired and then he files a complaint, he feels like nothing will make of it. They'll just think he'll take it as like the city will just be like, oh, he's just doing this because he didn't make the cut.
Retaliation, right. And how long was this officer on probation for? How long was he
So
on the
when
job?
you at that department, as soon as you get hired, you're on a 1 year probation, and he was 6 months through his probation when this all happened.
Interesting.
Is there any way to know if there's been prior complaints filed against the chief, captain?
Not that they stated in the case. I'm assuming there wasn't, just because she's still there and her husband was able to move her up in the ranks so quickly that I'm sure there wasn't any complaints. And he's African American and she was so attracted to him all of a sudden, and his training officer is making such a big deal about an African American being brought into the department. It seems like she has high interest in black males, so I wouldn't think that there would be any other instances of her acting like this.
Did they say which way he went? Which
Does
side?
not.
The-